Alright, now
So,
it's time for Sly to do a stakeout towards the Grizz.
so after having a lovely talk about, how far people should go in representing other races and whatnot, I guess I can confirm that looking back at it, I'm fine with the Grizz as a villain. Like, I'll admit, he's better than I remembered him to be. Again, I
I can
wouldn't.
tell you it also he also, as you will see in this very part, also has one of the better boss fights.
I
Was the
will.
way you were.
I will. I will say this though. He's still not what I would consider as good as like the original trilogy villains. And I wouldn't even consider him quite as good as El Jefe or Toothpick. But yeah, he's definitely one of the better villains of this game, which, trust me, the game does need. I'm still a bit iffy on villain number 5, but I can assure you, villains 4 and 6 are just crap.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that pretty much everyone agrees on anyway. Especially
the way you
villain
were
4.
talking. Just the way you were talking about him earlier, I thought there was going to be like a plot twist. Like, the villain here turns out to be like, I don't know, one of Sly's ancestors, even though it doesn't make any sense.
Dwibs, that would be
No.
incredibly stupid to have someone like that be a villain.
And no, he's not setting up Droid with there is nothing like that.
You probably thought I was.
I mean, to be fair, in a long lineage of Coopers, the odds are
Rotten apple, you say?
Yeah, at least one of them was a pretty bad.
I guess it might be a potential incentive, but when you get down to it, it requires a lot of setup. As
Yeah.
in, maybe he gets to have foresight thanks to someone with the time machine and decides that the lines of Coopers is not worthy to be, to be continued.
Or maybe if when Sly is listing off all of his ancestors, he deliberately misses one of them.
Keep in mind also what the Jova mentioned a couple of parts ago about, and me too, about the meaning of contrivance. Because when the actual main villains of the Paradox's plan gets fully revealed, it will come back in full force. Considering the particular setting of this game.
It's like, okay.
It's because I've seen plenty of media, even media that's considered among the very best, have something that people like to complain about, like contrivances or
again.
Well, you'll be able to see in due time, Dweebs, don't worry. For example, to give an example instead of different standards, my suspension of disbelief can totally accept the fact that Grizz has an actual cell phone, a brick one model to boot, that he can use to communicate to Paradox in 2 different time periods. He's in one place, the other in another. But I can totally believe that.
Like stuff like that, we can easily assume that the Paradox geared his henchmen with that tech or whatnot. So, stuff like that is fine. Like, don't get me wrong.
He's from the future.
Contrivances are more often than not something that we do go with the flow on. The problem is when they get stacked on too much, or it's a contrivance that absolutely breaks the suspension of disbelief.
And then someone will throw at you, well, how do you respond? I mean, typically that's how I respond, although I'm gonna wait until the story ends. But how do you respond to someone who says, really, this breaks your suspension of disbelief in a series with a talking, sneaking raccoon
and
a turtle who's good with tech?
I'm specifically referring to Dweebs in terms of contrivance is not so much, tied to suspension of disbelief. Don't worry.
And to answer your hypothetical question there, Dwibs, well, again, that's the thing. Suspension of disbelief always varies with the property. Take, for example, the Marvel Comics universe here. Yes, we do have to pay mind that a lot, and I do mean a lot of wacky crap can go on in that stuff. That being said, there are certain things to go against. Like, for instance, the physics of Marvel Comics are not immediately Looney Tunes unless it's a character like Howard the Duck or something. Like, yes.
Slapstick, yeah.
Like, sure, yeah, a guy got his powers from a spider bite. That doesn't automatically mean he can suddenly open different dimensions or portals in time or whatnot.
Unless he's imbued by the Omega Force, but it's a story for another time.
All the spiders from the future.
Okay, Dweebs, that's kind of more like what happened with Spider-Man 2099, but the powers that he got, it was still relatively grounded for
Spider-Man.
the sake of, having a Spider-Man in the year 2099. But let me quickly mention about specifically the mission, if you haven't caught it yet. Again, the entire point is for Sly to stay close so Bentley can triangulate the position using the Grizz's telephone in order to obtain particular codes that help entering his secret base, from the actual entrance
This
because it's
henchman don't
protected.
see you. Sir, there's a raccoon bouncing
They have,
on the,
remember,
things right
Dweebs,
above
the
you.
guards in this universe have tunnel vision, they don't look up.
To be fair,
And yeah, from the halfway point, the Grizz are
that's
sprinting,
been a
so
thing
you have to
throughout
keep
the
up.
series. It's weird.
One new interesting upgrade that got introduced in this game, that it's a minor thing, but I think it helps a lot, is the ability for Sly to actually sprint while, suspended on top of ropes, which is something that he could not do in previous game. It's actually useful for the backtracking and the stakeout missions, so there is that.
Also,
Because
Dweebs.
that's another thing that's...
Hold on. Also, Dweebs, about that thing you mentioned about that being a bit weird, well, again, that's just one of the contrivances that you have to let go in a video game. Like, again, video games are definitely site to a lot of contrivances, but to be fair, that is strictly to make the game fair. Now, one could argue that maybe there would be other ways to make it make sense and also be fair, but I'm saying fair a lot in this sentence, but to be fair, in order
To be fair.
yeah, you have to make it so that a game is winnable.
Now let me tell you how it is. I am an artist. I got paintings to create. And I ain't putting up with any more of your excuses. Now, you give me the eggs I need for my paint, or I climb through this foam and squeeze them out of you myself. You got that play up. Hello? Hello?
Still not working.
Dang.
You need to go higher up the mountain, I think,
Yeah,
to get a better
well, that's
reception.
alright, guys. You can just
And the mission was a waste of time because the Grizz smashed the phone before Bentley could retrieve the data.
Oh.
Brilliant. Also, a shot. Fuck.
That's alright. Don't worry, guys. That's alright. You can buy another. Oh no, wait.
Don't worry, Tio. I have a little bit to say in my final thoughts about this bullshit.
Not just that. Carmelita is here to magically rescue the mission because she got the code on their own, off screen.
That's
Oh, great.
nice.
Let me just say this, regardless of what you think about this game, this shit never happened in the original trilogy. I don't really see why they had to make a mission completely pointless, like, right at the end of it.
And that's the thing. This isn't the only mission that works like this, being pointless and all.
I thought I saw one of them like that, and I moaned about it, but I can't remember where.
Not really,
Okay. Okay, I can tell you, the closest we got was the fact that, the efforts of the gang were ultimately thwarted, but it was like a long run kind of thing. But anyway, we have another cutscene where we need to finally bury the hatchet between Carmelita and Sly.
Wait, I wish it was...
Yes, it is. Hold on.
Working on my own these past few days had given me time to think, and I'd realized some things. Sly may have been lying to me the whole time in Paris.
You did
I
too.
was
I
too.
lied to myself as well. In my heart, I knew something was up.
What do you mean you were lying to yourself? You were lying to him as well. Jesus
I wanted
Christ.
to believe he'd change.
Oh, she's half
That
right.
maybe I'd change.
But she's not the kind of right she should be.
Did this writer even
To accept
check
Wait.
how the previous 3 games went?
Also, you gotta love how
They
this...
worked on those 3 games.
Hang on, I want to hear what else she has to say.
chase Sly.
What is that face?
After the fact. But now that I'd fought along
Maybe we
Oh,
used
wait,
too
this
early
guy?
the go to Orny jail thing, Shirai.
I had to admit a newfound respect.
Really?
We aren't really
Where did that come
I
from?
question it being a bit
Fight for
newfound.
justice. We just do it from
So
opposite
what
sides
was
of
even the
aisle.
point of you being mad at him then?
Honestly,
Maybe it's like one of those.
If anything, it
typical
ultimately
family
convinced
where
that,
they get over it after like a
Carmelita
few
has
years.
some kind of psychosis.
Like, that's
Spur
the...
of the moment emotions, I guess.
Like I said...
Well, it's like, is it like a family squabble where you have an argument with an ultimate?
So there-
I genuinely get the feeling the writer genuinely believes this is just funny.
Or
It's
at least
not-
endearing, I guess.
But it's not.
You know-
it's
You know, I hate to say it, but when characters just change their motivations on a dime, that's when you're starting to come off like bad fan fiction. Don't worry, we haven't quite
Well,
got.
unless the character is just really, really impulsive.
Also, Shira, don't worry, we haven't seen the worst of Carmelita. It's around 6 parts from now or something. But for more pressing matters, again, as Bentley says, now that we have the codes, it's all a matter of entering the base of the grids and disabling his operation, where everyone will have to do their part. Murray will have to disable some machines, Bob will have to climb the wooden structure and disable the valves somehow. And Sly will ultimately have to clean some of the guards along, and while Bentley will have to demolish some of the places.
Use your pugilistic skills on any guards that might get in your way. After this, the system will be completely disabled, and we can do a little bear hunting. Sly, it'll be your job to take down Grizz when we find him. Well, that's the plan. You should all be clear on what needs to be done, so let's get out there and put this bear on ice.
Yeah.
Anyway, as I was saying, if there's one thing that I'm really not a fan of when it comes to criticism, is when, especially in a really long-running franchise, is when people criticize something that happened earlier on, and yet they were okay with it there.
To be fair, Dwibs, back then, that was when the developers may not have known better. Whereas in a later game, they should know better at that point.
There's also one detail that I did mention. Oh, thank you, game. But that I did not reminded it for when we actually got this. But hold on, wait till this is over.
Carmelita, are you sure you'll be all right?
Of course. Why wouldn't I be?
Well,
I mean, she's a
wouldn't
cop.
catch cold or something.
But he wants to help the girlfriend.
Also, I love how that cutscene from earlier suggested that she knew he was planning a heist. Could have stopped him right there and then, but she chose not to because of her broken
Anyway, first up is
heart.
Bentley. But like as I was saying, I think that I did mention previously, but I did not remind it when we got to this game. Sucker Punch did actually approve, gave a sort of a blessing towards the script of this.
Although, to be fair, we don't know when that script was, we don't know what edition of that script was. It's like I said with when Ian Colfer supposedly gave his blessings to the Artemis Fowl movie script. Context is everything, and I don't have enough to know if this is the game they actually gave their blessings to.
Not only that, there's, you can have an idea, it's how it's executed. It could have been executed differently across games, potentially.
That too, a lot can
It's a
change in development.
case-by-case thing.
Not only
You
that,
need to look at each case individually, regardless of whether something happened earlier on in the series or not, I think.
Not only that, but there's also the chance that they could have just said that they gave their blessing for good PR. And, contractual obligations and all that stuff.
That's the thing. That's the main reason why I've been attributing this to stupidity rather than malice, because I genuinely get the vibe that the writers under the impression that this is also wacky and fun. That these
I
two are arguing.
still believe someone in the development team, or at the very least the writer, had kind of a thing for Carmelita in some capacity.
That's
That's undeniable at this point.
Well, I mean, considering how bad they've made her look, that is some weird thing they have for her.
Yeah,
We haven't seen the last event, Thieves, believe me.
that's the thing.
That's like
that's the
that'd be like someone saying that they really love Cloud, but they make him an arrogant prick who hits people all the time.
Well,
I'm gonna
Thieves,
wait until I see what they do to Penelope before I give my thoughts.
well, that's the thing, Shiro. We haven't even found her yet. For all
We
we know,
will, though.
How many parts are left of this?
around 6. There is like an extras part, but again, in terms of plot-wise, around 6.
Anyway,
And again, there's always my final thoughts.
Anyway, though, Dwibs does have a point, though, too. Like, well, for somebody who had the hots for Carmelita, she looks bad in this game. I mean, okay. Obviously not visually because, well, they made her look hotter and basically turned her top into a bra and all that. But no, character-wise, Carmelita has not looked good. Like I said, that last cutscene we saw suggested that she knew Sly was going to do the heist all along, but she didn't stop him because her heart was oh so broken. When Carmelita in the past has always been about business first.
That's
and
the thing, Joe.
later.
Remember, it's a trope from the 90s in how female characters were written. The whole stoic character. That's inside they're secretly these fragile people who are just lying to themselves, and they need someone to actually keep them in company or some shit
That's
like
the
that.
thing. Carmelita was never like that in the
No, I'm
original
talking
series.
specific about the game. I get the idea that's the thought process they went through, and they thought it was genuinely endearing.
And that's not even the only problem, though. She is... I can't believe I'm saying this. She's even more impulsive than she was in the original trilogy. Like, yeah, she definitely had a temper, but she did have some level of professionalism to her. That's why she could be considered a worthy opponent to Sly. With how impulsive she acts in this game, you'd wonder how she was able to keep up to Sly. Well, aside from the fact that Sly secretly had the hots for her, but still though, Carmelita kind of seems a bit dumb in this game.
Remember what I said also for the second and third game. Again, particularly the second game showcased the fact that, at least also the first part of 3, showcased the fact how she's prioritizing her job and respect towards justice at all costs. Also, yes, more sexy, but I want to talk over this because this is terrible. But then, between the ending of 3 and this game, it's like everyone completely forgot that kind of characterizations, and they were like, yeah, but at the end of the day, she's no better than the thieves, who commit all those atrocities. Which, like, I get the idea of having the great morality, but that's a thing that's usually reserved for the world building. That was reserved for the world building for this game, and applying that to one character that seemed to be the most righteous, and without being preachy about it. It really felt like, a step back, and this game essentially built from that.
To give Sly Free some credit, the reason people were willing to more so let that one slide was because it was always hinted that she did have a soft spot for Sly, and that, if he truly was on the side of the law, that she could get along with him, so she took that opportunity. How ethical it is definitely up for debate, but it doesn't seem completely out of the realm of possibility that if there was a way to get their happy ending, Carmelita would go for it. What would not work is if Carmelita suddenly flipped on her own side, though, or, did half the stuff she does in this game, because, again, there's a certain line here and there. I mean, with the line that... Okay, consider Sly 3 the tightrope line. Consider Sly 4 the figure jumping off a tightrope into the water full of the sharks just so they can jump them all.
Anyway, next up is Bob for another coming section, but this one is actually more challenging, and you need to do the extra job of, detaching the valves.
Tio, have we mentioned who voices Bob?
Oh, right, no, we didn't. You think that, being the bulky guy with the kind of Hulk speak, he would be voiced to by Fred Tatasciore, but no, it's Patrick Seitz, oddly enough.
Really?
I mean, it does the job fine. It just feels a bit
Patrick
odd,
Seitz seems like a guy who, yeah, you do get with a deep voice, but normally, like, well, when I think grunts or whatnot, I think Frank Welker or Fred Tatasciore, like...
Okay, I don't know. I actually don't know about this because you guys seem to be more familiar with him, but has Frank Welker worked for video game roles?
Oh, all the time. Like, all the time.
Yeah, he's even been in Scooby-Doo video games.
I'm talking, okay, I get the idea, maybe, but those are like role reprisal for licensed product. I'm talking about, like, say, an original role.
I'm pretty sure he's done plenty animal noises. I'll check.
He's definitely done Transformers, but I guess that's not what you meant by original.
Frank.
Well, that's a good segue while we're waiting, Drova, because out of curiosity, do the Transformers games actually keep the voice actors from the movies, or do they keep mix and match with some of the stuff from the animated series?
Well, when it comes to certain things, it depends. That said, Peter Cullen and Frank Welker have been relatively recurring. They're not in all the video games, but they are in arguably the most. Peter Cullen as Optimus Prime, and Frank Welker as what is arguably the most iconic voice of Megatron.
Here's a great example for you. He was Oswald in Epic Mickey.
Oh, that was him? That's pretty neat.
He was also Zervan, also called the Ancient One on StarCraft 2. I don't know what that is. So.
I know about it.
Oh dear.
Unfortunately, this means that there's a change of plans, so the gang will have to... This is the kind of plan where the things get scrambled a bit. Yeah, that's another thing. Compared to the previous games, most of the plans of the gang actually go for the way they want. There's only just some minor delays or reroading, and most of the conflict gets from the fact that the ancestors get their cane stolen. But we never get an occasion like, say, the second episode in India, where the gang, the plan might go through fruition, but the gang has to improvise at the very end, and it still doesn't manage to work. Something like that.
I won't lie. If it weren't for some of the stupid crap that Worlds 4 and 5 do with their story bits, I think 3 would have kind of been the lamest of the story bits for me. Like, again, that's not to say it would be overly bad, and there are some interesting ideas, but between Bob being arguably the least interesting of the Cooper ancestors, you know, and, well, again, some of the more wackier hijinks story-wise, like, again, Murray's character arc.
Which we're about to actually see. Well, okay, we did saw the conclusion with Bentley, but we're kinda getting sort of an epilogue with this mission, actually.
Yeah, and it's like, again, do we really need to bring that back, guys? The fact that Murray couldn't climb a wall, even though that was never his thing in the games.
They don't do that necessarily in details, but it's all about showcasing the fact that he's still an essential member to the team, and he can work on his own, you know, if he needs to, even for improvisational skills.
Which is a problem. He had already found his place as the team's heart, essentially, so having him have to realize it through this character arc is redundant and stupid.
Not bad. A little sloppy, though, don't you think?
Hey, that was almost a compliment. I'll take it.
So...
Way to hustle, Sly.
Okay, Bob's
Now let's
bit
go
that
find
was
Murray.
funny. Next.
Man, I knew I should have made that left turn.
Ha! You didn't say it, Albuquerque.
So, because of this delay, Murray is the first to arrive to confront the Grizz. And, you know, Murray being the Murray, might as well charging guns blazing.
It's like in Top Gear where James is the first to arrive. It's really rare.
Murray, we have to help him.
All right,
Wait a
let's
sec,
see.
guys. Murray can handle this.
What?
Yeah, it's okay.
I mean, it's not the first boss he's beaten on his own, so there's nothing to worry about.
It's a pink nightmare. Trust me.
Well, I mean, unless the villain cheats or something.
No, surprisingly enough, the Grizz is sportive for what it's worth.
I never really wanted to do.
Also, for one thing, one nitpick I would argue, I appreciate again the fact that we're using the font color theme from the villain, but the Grizz uses this very dark shade of purple that makes it a bit hard to read.
It ironically looks blurry a bit before you have time
If
to
it
focus
had
on it.
if it had like a white border to the letters, it might actually help.
A little closer. It's the only time I truly feel free. And now, you Cooper punks roll in, and you gonna spoil my dream?
Well, your dream involves messing with the fabrics of time, which could cause somebody to
So we
cease to
cannot have
exist.
that.
Man, 'cause the Grizz...
And yes, his medallion doubles as a pair of skates. Also jazz hands. Alright, boss fight, and like I said, it's actually still one of the better of the entire game, so there is that. I wanted to say, compared to the previous, the original trilogy, pretty much all of the bosses instead, okay, there's like one exception, for Chapter 4, but most of the bosses rely on just wait until the attack pattern is complete, until there's the moment of vulnerability, and then you're allowed to attack for a bit. Compared to the boss of the previous trilogy, where instead you were free to whack men as much as you want, in the air there's still a clear pattern. I'm fine either way, I guess, but I have to say that it is the difference can be noticeable.
It is a bit of a shame, but alas.
Well, to be fair, again, this boss fight manages to be a bit more creative because it has multiple phases for each, because first it's just the simple dodging attacks, then it's punching the ice blocks, and then you have a rhythm game.
In the meantime, basically he was also the Mad Mage X-Czar in Baldur's Gate.
So he did work on a bunch of those old Western RPGs.
And he was also Odin in LEGO's Marvel Avengers.
Huh. There we go. Once you get that, you're free to beat the Grizz for a while. But again, it's all about the pattern. After that, some minor things will actually be changed. Also, the particular music choice that Peter McConnell decided to use here is a bit weird.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm just gonna say this.
I like the one that he's using for the actual skating thing because it's appropriate for the slapstick that it's tied to it. But the main boss fight thing seems more what's the term?
Unfitting,
haunting, more than it needs to be. Like it's supposed to be like a horror,
I'm just
type
gonna
of
say,
encounter, when it's not.
I'm just gonna say the obvious thing. Shouldn't it have been more like a rap punk thing, given the Grizz's whole shtick?
Like the use of the xylophones, to represent the fact that again, Ice Age, prehistoric stuff makes sense. I'm not disputing that. It's just that the composition as a whole feels out of place.
Again, it's such an obvious time to go for a more punk R&B rap sort of boss, kind of similar to
don't think the composer is beyond that. He's capable of doing very different kind of things, as we have seen in the past, and we will actually see later on.
For those wondering what I'm describing, think something similar to the frog boss fight from Crash to Insanity. Obviously inspired by funky rap sort of jams and all that.
You mean Embryo?
Yes, well, the Embryo and Entropy fight from Crash to Insanity.
Okay. Yeah, also, in order to make things more challenging, starting from the second phase, when you have to do the rhythm game, memorization, most of them tends to be obstructed. Are committing the first phase where it's always like that, you need to keep on memory. To be fair, it's only 3 buttons, so it's relatively easy to remember. There we go.
But yeah,
also,
I do. Oh, go on.
No, go on. You first.
I do agree that it is a bit of a shame that the boss music seems sadly unfitting for this boss.
I mean, it's fine on its own. It's perfectly fine.
It's just unfitting. Especially
compared to some of the previous ones that we heard in this very game, mind you. El Jefe, despite not being Japanese, still gets a theme that's clearly inspired by classic Akira Kurosawa movies. Because battle on a rooftop of some kind while everything's on fire. Classic imagery.
And Toothpick,
and Toothpick is basically the climax. Again, the climax from Back to the Future Part 3. So obviously the music goes like that.
I mean, it's not as unfitting as. I know it's an example I said before, but it's not as unfitting as the Japanese version of Pinstripe's boss theme from Crash 1.
Okay, I actually forgot what it's like that. The only major Japanese Crash soundtrack that's unfitting that I remember is the one in Crash Bash for Engine Level, which is the Can-Can.
And now Ripper... No, not Ripper Side. Dingo Dial.
Because in Crash Bash Western, they had a remix of Dingle Dial's theme.
Which was awesome.
For some reason, in the Japanese version, they replaced it with a synthesized version of the Can-Can.
I guess they thought
Why?
because
I
they
don't
thought
know.
a remix
I
version
don't
of
know.
Dingle. Because they thought a remix version of Dingle Dustin would be too redundant.
I mean, it's not even like when they replaced the music in Crash 1, where we at least know the reason. Apparently it wasn't video gamey enough. the
Also, I'm
original tracks.
guessing you died at some point, Teo, given the jump.
Yeah, again, it's just for convenience sake.
Wasn't that how Sega of America or whatever viewed the Sonic CD Japanese soundtrack?
Yeah, but this time it's in reverse. It's actually the Japanese that are saying that.
It's also what Waves was mentioning for that Shinobi game, only that it worked better for the West because the
The
original one was
European
not
version.
the European specifically, right?
Yeah, because I've heard both soundtracks. The Japanese US one just sounds like generic Sentai music, whereas the European one actually sounds like Shinobi. It's got the old style instruments with techno in it, like the other games.
Okay.
It ended before you completely depleted.
What
his
kind
life
of
bar.
wrestling move was that, Waves?
That performance was
The weird one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Teo. We got nothing.
Thanks, guys.
Damn.
I guess this makes up for all my screw-ups lately.
Actually, there is.
Lately,
Actually,
you had
it
just
does-
one screw up.
But it doesn't
Actually,
matter
it does
if
have a
you're
name.
team.
Yeah, and
The
to
big
give
toss.
credit, Bentley is a point, it doesn't matter, so let's just move the fuck on.
Today,
Wow,
you
it's
were
almost
the
like
hero,
that
Murray.
character arc, quote unquote, was
You know-
completely pointless.
Aw, shucks.
Well, if the game itself doesn't seem all that
Anybody bring anything to
interested in
Pizza?
m-
An apple
itself, why the hell should I?
Carmelita had cooled off a bit, but she hadn't forgiven me yet.
Yeah, sorry, Tia, we still got
I
that
thought,
bit
I
to
thought it
go.
had already
She
happened,
wanted
whatever.
to join up
Nope,
with a
it
bunch
still
of
has a
thieves,
few more worlds to
something
go.
that went against everything she stood for.
Thank you.
I could tell it was a tough decision, but in the end, she knew it was probably her only shot at busting the paradox.
What's he going to arrest the paradox?
Dimitri was happy to
No.
finally hear from us, as he'd been worried his bros were warping their faces off,
Okay.
whatever that meant.
But, speaking instead of contrivance, we're about to get the next artifact that conveniently brings us to where we need to be, because the Carmelita's cutscene showcased, the Grizz's crown that he stole from a place is an actual authentic crown from medieval England, so it's
Oh,
time to go
great.
there.
Again,
This game is bringing out all our favorites. Jova's
Right.
favorite tropes and Shiroi's favorite time period.
and also some of your favorite tropes to come on later, Dweebs. For now,
For the
though,
time-
we'll see you in the next part.
Yeah, for the time being, see you for the next part. See ya.
See ya.
Yeah.